The first thing that struck anyone entering the Hall of Echoes was the silence. Not the gentle kind, but the heavy, ancient quiet that pressed against the chest. And it was in this silence that Maren, the vampire king's maid, froze with a silver tray still in her hands. Her eyes were locked on a single portrait hung higher than the others. It showed a young boy with dust-colored eyes and a timid half-smile, painted in strokes so delicate they looked alive. She felt her pulse throb in her ears. She knew that face. She knew it too well. Across the hall, the vampire king Alistair was speaking with advisors about border disputes, unaware that his maid stood trembling. Maren's breath turned shallow. The heat behind her eyes stung. She whispered before she could stop herself, the words leaking out like a memory too heavy to keep inside. "Majesty, this boy lived with me at the orphanage." Her voice cracked, slicing through the silence. Every head turned at once. The tray nearly slipped from her hands. Alistair's gaze, sharp as moonlight on steel, shifted to the portrait and then back to her face, searching for the meaning behind her tremor. He walked toward her with slow, measured steps. Maren felt her knees weaken under the weight of his presence. The scent of cold night air followed him. She remembered that smell from the days when she was young and desperate, begging on palace steps for help no one gave. The king stopped beside her, staring at the boy's painted eyes. "You recognize him," he said quietly. Maren swallowed, nodding. Her voice shook as she added, "I held him when he had nightmares. I taught him how to write his name. And one night, he vanished." But before we continue, I want to invite you to something very special. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like. This helps me see that you support me and enjoy my stories. And comment below which city you're watching from. Now let's continue. Alistair studied her with a frown that wasn't anger, but something more complex. Maren felt the old guilt rising. The orphanage was not a safe place. It was underfunded, cold, and haunted by the decisions she made to protect the children. She had lost many battles there, lost many little souls to hunger, disease, or the streets. But this boy, Elias, was different. Elias was quiet, bright, and carried a sadness in his eyes that never matched his young age. She had promised herself she'd keep him safe, and she had failed. The vampire king's fingers brushed the lower edge of the portrait frame, tracing its carved symbols. "This painting was hidden in the sealed wing," he said. "We found it during restoration. No name, no signature." He turned back to her. "What else do you remember?" His voice was calmer now, but she sensed tension beneath it, like the taut pull of a bowstring. Maren forced herself to breathe. Elias arrived when he was 4. No records, just a bundle of blankets and a mark on his wrist, a crescent scar. Her voice faltered. "Majesty, the mark in the painting, it's the same." Alistair leaned in, inspecting the small detail near the boy's hand. A pale crescent, barely visible, but unmistakably present. His jaw tightened. The torches near them flickered, as if stirred by an unseen wind. Maren watched him, her heart thundering. The king whispered something she couldn't hear, but she saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. That alone made her spine go cold. "Why does this matter to you, Majesty?" she asked softly. His answer came abruptly, too quickly to be rehearsed. "Because this boy should not exist." The words lodged in her chest like a blade. Alistair stepped back, pacing once, twice. "This portrait, this child, he carries a mark only royal heirs are born with. But I had no sister, no brother, no secret kin." He looked at Maren with a rawness she had never seen in him before. "If your memory is true, then someone hid him. From me, from everyone." Maren felt the room tilt. Elias, an heir, impossible. And yet, the fear in Alistair's face was real, the same fear she once saw in mothers who arrived at the orphanage with nothing but a child and a prayer. "Majesty," she whispered. "Elias vanished after a group of cloaked men visited us. They took nothing else. No supplies, no other child, just him." Her breath trembled. "I never saw them again." Alistair's eyes darkened as though recalling something buried deep. "Those men were royal shadows," he said. "My father commanded them. But why?" He stopped, his voice hollowing. Whatever truth he was reaching for, it terrified him. Maren looked at the portrait once more, feeling the old promise she had failed to keep rise inside her. Elias might still be alive, and if he was, he had been stolen for a reason. "Majesty," she murmured, "what do we do now?" Alistair exhaled slowly, the weight of a kingdom in his breath. "We find him," he said, "and we uncover who hid a prince in an orphanage." The wind outside the palace shifted as if sensing the turmoil brewing within. Alistair dismissed his advisors with a single gesture, leaving only Maren standing in the vast hall. The torches along the stone walls hissed softly, their flames bending toward the portrait as though drawn by its secret. Maren touched her fingertips to the edge of the tray she still clutched, the silver trembling faintly. Her voice was low when she finally spoke again. "Majesty, if Elias truly is what you say, then someone hid him from the throne. Someone powerful." Alistair's expression hardened. There was a shadow there, not cast by the torches but by memory. Before my father died, he destroyed countless documents. He claimed it was for the kingdom's safety, but I never believed him. He turned toward the tall windows overlooking the courtyard, where the last light of dusk stained the stones a deep red. If he hid a royal child, he did it to control his succession. His jaw tightened. Or to eliminate it. The idea twisted Maren's stomach. She had lived long enough in the orphanage to see the cruelty men inflicted when they feared losing power. She remembered Elias, small and thin, clutching his blanket as if it were armor. He had trusted her, and she had failed. She closed her eyes, forcing back the shame. "Majesty," she said, steadying her breath, "there is one place where answers may still exist. The old records room beneath the orphanage. It was sealed when I left, but I know how to enter it." Alistair turned sharply. "You never mentioned this before." Maren met his eyes. "Because I was afraid. The night Elias vanished, I heard whispers, threats. I thought if I stayed quiet, the others would be safe." Her voice thinned, but she didn't look away. "I was a coward." The Vampire King stepped closer, his presence a mixture of storm and stillness. "You survived," he said, "and you protected as many as you could. Fear is not cowardice." His voice softened, just slightly. "But now we must face what was hidden." A knock echoed through the hall before she could answer. Thomas, the palace steward, entered with a rigid bow. "Majesty," he said, "there is someone requesting an audience. He insists it concerns the boy in the portrait." Maren's breath hitched. Alistair moved instantly, the air shifting with him. "Who is he?" Thomas hesitated. "He would not give a name. He said only that he is a friend of the lost heir." The tension in the room deepened. Alistair exchanged a glance with Maren, then nodded. "Bring him." Thomas disappeared, and for a moment the hall felt too large, the walls too close. Maren wiped her palms on her apron, steadying herself. The silence stretched until footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. A figure emerged from the doorway, cloaked in tattered fabric darkened by years. His face was mostly hidden, but the line of his jaw, the slight tremor in his hands, something about him felt fragile, worn. He stopped a few paces away and lowered his hood. Maren gasped softly. The man couldn't have been older than 30, yet his eyes held exhaustion far beyond those years. A thin scar crossed one cheek. His voice cracked when he spoke. "Majesty, I was with Elias the night he disappeared." Alistair's gaze sharpened, assessing. "Who are you?" The man's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "My name is Leor. I was another child in the orphanage, older than him by a few years. I protected him as best I could." His eyes glimmered with guilt. "But when the cloaked men came, I failed." Maren stepped forward, heart pounding. "Leor, but you left before Elias vanished." "I remember." He shook his head. "I didn't leave. I was taken too. They kept me in the shadows, forced me to watch. Elias, he wasn't taken to be killed." His voice trembled. "He was taken to be trained." The words landed like a blow. Alistair stiffened. "Trained for what?" Leor's answer came in a whisper that seemed to bleed fear into the air. "For war. For a throne he doesn't know exists. And for a destiny that will destroy him if we don't reach him first." Maren's knees weakened. Elias, gentle-eyed Elias, being shaped into a weapon. The thought sliced through her. Alistair's voice dropped, sharp and controlled. Where is he now? Lior looked up, his eyes hollow but resolute. Hidden deep within the Ashen Valley, guarded by those who once served your father. His breath shook, and he is no longer a child. Maren felt the floor shift beneath her. Elias was alive, but the boy she remembered might not be the one they would find. Majesty, she whispered. When do we leave? Alistair didn't hesitate. Now. His eyes burned with a rare fire. Before the last heir becomes the kingdom's greatest threat. They left the palace under the cloak of night, traveling with only the essentials, a pair of stallions, a sealed satchel of royal documents, and the determination tightening every breath each of them took. The moon hung low, lighting their path with a pale glow as the gates groaned open. Maren rode behind Alistair, her fingers gripping the reins so tightly they ached. Behind them, Lior followed on foot, his stride steady and purposeful, as if he had memorized every stone and shadow along the way. The road toward the Ashen Valley twisted through fields of silver grass that brushed against their legs like whispers. Maren inhaled the cool air, tasting the faint scent of pine and distant rain. But beneath it lingered something heavier, like iron and smoke, remnants of an older world. She glanced at Alistair, watching the controlled tension in the way he held himself atop his horse. For all his power, there was a worry in him she had never seen before. Majesty, she murmured softly, what do you fear we'll find? He didn't look at her. His jaw tightened. My father was a cruel man, Maren. He hid his crimes in locked rooms and sealed corridors. If he hid Elias, he did it for a purpose, and that purpose never favored mercy. The forest thickened ahead, shadows weaving between the trunks like restless spirits. Lior halted, raising a hand. His fingers trembled slightly. We should walk from here, he said. They placed watchers in the treetops. Horses will draw attention. Alistair dismounted without a word. Maren followed, her feet sinking into moss. The forest smelled of damp earth and old leaves. Every crack of a twig echoed too loudly. Lior moved ahead with careful steps, his breath shallow. I know the path, he whispered. I was dragged through it when they took us. Maren stayed close to him. His gait held a limp she hadn't noticed before, something he tried to hide. She wanted to ask, but the silence here felt sacred, dangerous even, and breaking it seemed unwise. They walked for what felt like hours until the air shifted. The temperature dropped. The wind grew still. Lior slowed, his shoulders stiffening. We're close, he breathed. There's an entrance ahead. It's hidden beneath the roots of a fallen tree. Alistair nodded, his senses sharpening. And inside? Lior hesitated, his voice barely audible. Corridors, training halls, cells. He swallowed hard. And guards who were loyal to your father even after his death. The fallen tree appeared through the thick fog. Its massive roots curled around a dark hollow, like fingers guarding a secret. Maren felt the cold seep through her clothes as they approached. Alistair crouched first, peering into the opening. Stay behind me, he said, his tone low, protective. But before they could enter, a rustling sound broke the stillness. Leaves trembled overhead. Maren's breath caught. Lior stiffened. Alistair turned sharply, eyes narrowing. A figure dropped from the trees, landing silently on the moss. He looked young, perhaps no older than 20, with pale skin and hair as dark as the valley night. His eyes glowed faintly, not with malice, but with something colder. Devotion. The cloak he wore bore the crest of the old king. Majesty, the boy said, bowing with rigid respect. I did not expect you to come personally. Maren stepped back instinctively. Alistair's stance shifted, ready for attack. Who are you? He demanded. The boy straightened, meeting his gaze. My name is Kale. I was instructed to wait for you. Lior's eyes widened in horror. No, he whispered. That's impossible. They never let us speak to outsiders. Kale's lips twitched. Not a smile, but a controlled flicker of emotion. Times changed after the air grew stronger. Maren felt her heartbeat rise painfully. Elias, she whispered. Is he alive? Kale tilted his head. Alive, and changed. The training has shaped him. His voice held admiration, but beneath it something like fear pulsed faintly. He asked me to deliver a message. Alistair tensed. What message? The boy raised his gaze, and for a brief second, Maren thought she saw pain flicker in his expression. He said, Tell the king I know what he hid from me, and tell the maid. I remember her stories. Maren's breath punched out of her chest. Her hand flew to her mouth. He remembers me, she whispered, the words breaking. Alistair's eyes darkened with conflict. What does he know? Cale lowered his voice, each word deliberate and sharp. He knows he was meant to replace you. A silence fell so heavy it stole the warmth from the air. Alistair's jaw tightened. My father intended for him to rule. Cale nodded. Yes, but Elias learned something else, something that changed everything. Leor stepped forward, trembling. What did he learn? Cale's answer shattered the last thread of certainty tying them to the world they knew. He learned that he was never meant to rule your kingdom, but to destroy it. Maren's knees trembled. Alistair's expression froze. Leor whispered a curse under his breath, and Maren understood something with terrifying clarity. The boy she once held was now a force her world was not prepared to face. The woods seemed to close in around them after Cale's revelation, as if even the trees felt the weight of the truth. Maren's breath fogged in the cold air, her pulse thudding in her throat. She stared at Cale, searching his expression for any sign that this was some mistake, some cruel misunderstanding. But the boy's eyes remained steady, almost mournful. Elias, her gentle, quiet Elias, had been shaped into something meant to tear down everything in his path. Alistair stepped forward, his presence shifting like an oncoming storm. Explain, he said, his voice low and commanding. What do you mean my father intended him to destroy the kingdom? Cale didn't flinch. Not the kingdom you rule, he replied carefully. The kingdom he wanted for himself, the old order. The legacy he believed you were too merciful to continue. His gaze flickered toward Leor. Your father's loyalists hid Elias away to mold him into a weapon. A shadow king. A second heir who would rise if you proved unworthy. Maren felt the sting of those words. She remembered Alistair's early days on the throne, how he changed the orphanage policies, how he opened the gates to human refugees, how he punished lords who preyed on the powerless. Mercy was not weakness, she thought fiercely. But she also knew what kings like his father believed. Elias is not a weapon, she whispered, shaking her head. He's a boy who liked carving little wooden animals and listening to stories. Cale's expression softened. He remembers those stories. He told me your voice was the only warmth he had in those first years. But the training, his voice faltered. The training was relentless. Leor stepped forward, his fists clenched. Where is he now? Cale looked toward the fallen tree, the entrance yawning like a wound in the earth. Below, he said, in the sanctum, preparing for a ritual that binds the old bloodline's will to him. If it succeeds, he won't just be trained, he'll be bound to their purpose forever. The forest grew colder. Maren wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly swallowed by fear for the child she once soothed through nightmares. How long do we have? She asked, her voice cracking. Cale hesitated. The ritual began yesterday. If we do not reach him before the last incantation, Elias will lose whatever part of himself still belongs to him. Alistair exchanged a grave look with Maren. Then we go now, he said. His tone carried iron. But Cale held up a hand. Majesty, there is something else. Alistair stopped. Maren's stomach tightened. Cale stepped closer, lowering his voice. Elias does not trust you. He believes you abandoned him, that you knew of his existence and let him suffer. The words hit like a physical blow. Maren felt Alistair freeze beside her, the air around him tightening. My father hid him, he said through clenched teeth. I had no knowledge of any child. Cale nodded. But Elias believes what they showed him. Falsified letters, forged decrees, stories of how you would have killed him if he returned. Leor cursed under his breath. Maren stepped closer to Alistair, seeing the heartbreak buried beneath his anger. Majesty, she said softly, he doesn't know the truth. He's just a boy who grew up surrounded by lies. Alistair exhaled slowly, grounding himself. Then I will show him the truth. Cale's expression tightened. He will fight you. He was trained to. Alistair's gaze hardened. I am not going to fight him. A rustling sound swept through the branches, followed by a distant echo like a low chant rising from the earth. Cale flinched. The ritual, he whispered. We're running out of time. Marin's determination surged. She stepped toward the hollow under the fallen tree, her heart pounding like a drum. Then we go, she said firmly. Elias needs us now more than ever. Alistair moved beside her, his presence steady and resolute. Lior followed, his limp more pronounced, but his voice strong when he said, We won't let them finish what they started. Cale hesitated only a moment before joining them. Stay close. The corridors shift. They were designed to confuse intruders. Marin swallowed hard, tasting the damp earth and the metallic tang of fear. But she didn't look back. She ducked beneath the roots, stepping into the dark. Cold air brushed her face like a warning. Alistair's hand steadied the space beside her, guiding them forward. Somewhere below, the child she once held was being turned into something unforgiving. And Marin knew that reaching him would not only test their courage, but their faith in who he truly was. The passage beneath the fallen tree felt alive. The walls were narrow, carved from ancient stone that pulsed faintly with reddish light, as if the earth itself carried a heartbeat. Marin placed her palm against the rough surface as they moved forward. It was cold, so cold that it numbed her fingertips instantly. Behind her, Lior limped carefully, breathing through the pain. Cale led them, every step cautious, his senses alert to traps hidden in the shifting corridors. Alistair stayed close to Marin, his eyes adjusting easily to the dimness. Every few moments he paused, listening, as though the stone itself whispered secrets only he could hear. The air tasted metallic, tinged with old magic and the faint scent of burning herbs. The deeper they went, the heavier the atmosphere became. Marin felt a pressure building inside her chest, a quiet ache that matched the rhythm of the distant chanting. The sanctum is below, Cale whispered, pointing toward a sharp turn where the corridor sloped downward. They built it to echo power. Every ritual resonates through the stone. Marin swallowed hard. How far is he? Cale hesitated. Close. Too close. If we can hear the chanting from here, they've already begun the binding stage. Lior cursed under his breath. We need to move faster. Alistair touched Marin's arm gently, grounding her. Stay behind me. We don't know what waits ahead. They descended the slope, stepping into a wider corridor lined with tall pillars carved in the shapes of ancient kings. Their faces were stern, their eyes hollow. Marin ran her fingers lightly along one of the carvings. Dust clung to her skin. The scent of incense drifted faintly from the far end, mingling with an underlying bitterness that made her throat tighten. Cale suddenly froze. His hand shot up. Quiet. The chanting stopped. A heavy silence pressed around them. Before Marin could breathe, a deep rumble shook the stones beneath their feet. She steadied herself against a pillar, heart pounding. Alistair stepped forward, his stance protective. They know we're here, he said. Cale nodded grimly. They always know. But before we continue, tell me in the comments what you think of this story so far and what you would do in her place. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills. Now, let's continue. The corridor split into 3 paths. Cale pointed to the one on the right. That leads to the sanctum. The others are illusions, or dead ends. He stepped forward, but the moment his foot touched the stone floor, a thin barrier of shimmering light sparked to life, blocking the path. Cale staggered back. A ward, he hissed, triggered by our presence. Alistair stepped closer, examining the barrier. The air near it crackled, filling Marin's nose with the scent of ozone. Can it be broken? Cale's expression shifted between fear and determination. Yes, but only by someone tied to royal blood. Your blood. Alistair extended his hand. His fingers hovered over the shimmering surface. The energy pulsed, sensing him. Marin felt the temperature rise as the air tightened. With a deep breath, Alistair pressed his palm to the barrier. The impact was immediate. A shockwave rippled outward. Marin shielded her face as sparks burst across the corridor. The floor trembled. Lior braced himself against the wall. Alistair groaned softly, the first sign of pain Marin had ever heard from him. She reached for him, instinctive and desperate. "Majesty, it's all right," he said, though his voice wavered. The barrier flickered, then shattered like glass, dissolving into the air. Cale's breath escaped in relief. "Hurry, they'll have felt that." They rushed forward. The air grew warmer, thick with smoke and magic. The chanting resumed, louder now, urgent, almost frantic. Marin's heart slammed against her ribs. The corridor widened again until they stepped into a massive chamber lit by torches and a glowing sigil carved into the floor. And in the center of that sigil stood Elias. Marin stopped breathing. He was no longer the timid child she remembered. He stood tall, his shoulders broad, his posture hardened by discipline. His dust-colored eyes were sharper now, almost luminous. But there was something else, something fractured, in the way he held himself, as if torn between two worlds. Around him, robed figures chanted, their voices weaving into the final arc of the ritual. Elias heard the disturbance. Slowly, he turned. Marin's breath broke. His gaze landed on her first, confused, then pained. "You," he whispered, voice trembling. "You're real." The robed figures reacted instantly. One stepped between Elias and the intruders, shouting, "Stop the king! Do not let him near the heir!" Alistair stepped forward, but Marin moved faster. She broke free of his reach and ran toward Elias. He didn't step back. He didn't raise a hand to stop her. He simply stared, like a child who'd seen a memory return from the dead. "Marin," he whispered, "you came for me." She reached him just as the chamber erupted in chaos. The chamber exploded into movement the moment Marin reached Elias. Torches flickered violently as the air pulsed with magic. The robed guardians surged forward, their chants twisting into sharp commands. Alistair moved with inhuman speed, intercepting the first attacker with a single powerful shove that sent the man crashing into a pillar. The sound echoed like thunder. Elias flinched at the chaos around him, but he didn't step away from Marin. His breath was uneven, his hands trembling, not from fear, but from the pull of the ritual's unfinished power. Marin cupped his face gently, feeling the heat beneath his skin. "Elias," she whispered, her voice breaking, "look at me. You're safe." His eyes darted across her features with desperate confusion. Up close, she saw the strain in him, the exhaustion carved into the lines around his mouth, the flicker of panic beneath his resolve. "They told me you were gone," he said, trembling, "that you abandoned me, that no one would come." Marin's heart cracked. "I never abandoned you," she whispered fiercely. "You were taken from me." But the ritual's glow intensified around them, threads of crimson light stretching from the sigil toward Elias, like claws refusing to release him. He winced, pressing a hand to his chest. I can't leave," he gasped. "If I step off this sigil before the ritual is broken, it will bind me anyway." A robed guardian lunged for them. Lior intercepted him despite his limp, swinging a fallen torch like a staff. He drove it across the man's back, flames scattering sparks. "Marin!" Lior shouted, panting. "Move him, now!" But Elias shook his head, fear slicing through his voice. "If you pull me off, it will kill me." Marin froze, her breath hitched painfully. "Then tell me how to free you." Before Elias could answer, Cale burst into the center of the chamber, dodging two guardians. His voice cracked with urgency. "Break the sigil. It feeds on obedience. If shattered, the ritual collapses." Alistair stopped fighting at once. "How?" Cale pointed at the stone circle beneath Elias's feet. "The center rune, the one under him. It's the anchor." Alistair's gaze snapped downward. "Then we remove him first." He reached forward, but Elias stumbled back, eyes wide. "No!" His voice was raw, frightened in a way that cut Marin to the bone. "You can't touch me. Your blood will trigger the binding. That's what they wanted. They want me tied to your throne so they can control us both." Alistair's jaw tightened. Rage flickered in his eyes, but not at Elias, at the men who twisted him into this. Marin steadied her voice. "There has to be another way. Elias, look at me. Who started the ritual?" Elias swallowed, glancing at the tallest guardian, the one with the silver mask partially cracked across the cheek. "He did. He knows the counterverse." Alistair's focus sharpened instantly. Then we take him. The masked guardian seemed to understand the moment their eyes met. He bolted toward a side exit. Alistair launched after him, moving like lightning. He caught the masked man at the doorway, slamming him against the stone arch with enough force to break the fragile mask in two. It hit the ground, revealing a lined face twisted with fanatic resolve. "End it!" Alistair demanded. "Speak the counterverse." The guardian spat blood, laughing through broken teeth. "You're too late. The heir belongs to the old king now." Alistair's fury simmered, but he kept control. "Marin!" he shouted without looking back. "Keep Elias steady." She nodded, wrapping her arms around Elias as the sigil trembled beneath them. The chamber vibrated with growing instability. Elias leaned into her touch instinctively, but his body was tense, as if torn between two commands. "Marin," he whispered, voice cracking. "I don't want to be what they made me." "You're not," she said, holding him tighter. "You're still the boy who carved animals, the boy who listened to stories. You are still Elias." The masked guardian screamed a final incantation, but Alistair silenced him with a swift, decisive strike, enough to knock him unconscious. Nothing more. Cale sprinted toward the fallen figure, kneeling beside him. "The counterverse is carved onto his amulet," he said, pulling a small, jagged pendant from beneath the guardian's robes. He studied it quickly. "If we speak it together, we can unravel the sigil." Alistair returned to the circle. "Then speak." Cale inhaled shakily and began the incantation. Alistair followed. Their voices intertwined, one sharp, one steady, shaking dust from the ceiling. The sigil beneath Elias flickered, dimmed, then cracked with a sound like splitting bone. Elias cried out as the magic snapped around him, releasing its hold. His knees buckled, but Marin held him up. The glow vanished. Silence fell, thick, trembling, miraculous. Elias collapsed into Marin's shoulder, breath ragged. "It's over," he whispered. But Alistair's eyes, locked on the broken sigil, filled with something darker. "No," he said quietly. This was only the beginning. The chamber still vibrated faintly with the echo of the broken ritual. Dust drifted down from the ceiling like pale snow, settling on Elias's hair and shoulders. Marin kept her arms around him until his trembling eased. His breath was shallow, warm against her collarbone. She brushed a hand over his back, feeling the tension slowly melt, replaced by exhaustion so deep it frightened her. Alistair stepped closer, his expression grave. "Elias," he said quietly, "can you walk?" Elias lifted his head, his eyes unfocused. "Yes, but I feel strange, like there's something still pulling at me." He placed a hand over his chest. "Like threads that haven't fully snapped." Cale frowned. The ritual was interrupted, not undone. Some of its influence may linger. "We need to get him out before the Guardians regroup." His voice carried a note of urgency Marin didn't miss. Lior limped to Marin's side, helping her support Elias. Marin gave him a grateful look, and he managed a small, tired smile. The boy she once protected had become a young man fighting to remember himself. She refused to let him slip away again. Alistair scanned the shadows between the pillars. "They'll send more once they realize the ritual failed. We need to move. Stay close." They guided Elias toward the corridor they entered from, but the ground vibrated suddenly beneath their feet. A low moan rippled through the stone, followed by a series of faint clicks, like gears shifting inside the walls. Cale's eyes widened. "No, they're sealing the exits." Marin felt her chest tighten. "We'll be trapped? Not if we reach the upper tunnels before the mechanism locks." Cale pointed toward the left side of the chamber, where a narrow passage twisted upward. "That leads to the old training halls. They connect to a disused shaft that opens near the valley cliffs." Alistair nodded. "Go." But before they reached the passage, Elias stopped abruptly. His knees trembled. Marin turned to him in alarm. "Elias?" He pressed a hand to his temple, wincing. "There's something..." A voice. His breath quickened. "It's whispering again." Marin's heart dropped. "From the ritual?" He nodded, shaking slightly. "It's telling me to return to the sigil. To finish what was started." Alistair moved instantly, placing a firm but gentle hand on Elias's shoulder. "Look at me." His voice was commanding, steady. Elias hesitated, then lifted his gaze. Alistair held it with unwavering intensity. You are not bound to their will. You hear me? You choose your path. A long, trembling breath escaped Elias's chest. I want to believe that. Then believe Marin, Alistair said. She crossed kingdoms to reach you. Elias looked at Marin, and something in his expression softened, something painfully familiar. I remember the stories you told me, he whispered. About the sky, about the constellations. I used to pretend the stars were watching over me. Marin felt tears sting her eyes. She touched his cheek gently. They still are. Before we continue, tell me if you would have the courage to live a story like this, or if something similar has ever happened to you. Don't leave the video, because what comes next will give you chills. Now, let's continue. They moved into the passage, the air changing immediately. It was colder, filled with the scent of damp stone and something metallic. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling, echoing softly. Elias leaned on Marin and Lior, his steps unsteady but determined. The tunnel narrowed until they had to move single file. Alistair led the way, using his heightened senses to anticipate bends and drops. Cale stayed near the rear, watching for pursuers. After several minutes, the corridor opened into a vast hall lined with old weapon racks and training dummies split down the center from years of harsh drills. The air smelled of old sweat and iron. Marin felt Elias shudder beside her. I've been here, he whispered. He reached out and touched the edge of a wooden dummy. A flicker of memory crossed his eyes. Pain, exhaustion, fear. They pushed us, he murmured. Harder than we could endure. Marin placed a hand on his shoulder. You endured. That matters. Alistair scanned the hall. His expression darkened. This place was built for breaking children. Cale nodded grimly. And reshaping them. A faint clang echoed from the tunnel behind them. They weren't alone anymore. Cale stiffened. They're coming. Alistair motioned toward the far end of the hall. The shaft should be ahead. But as they ran, Elias stumbled again. Marin caught him. Elias! He gripped her arm painfully tight. Something's wrong. The magic. It's waking again. Alistair reached them in 2 strides. What does it want? Elias's voice cracked. To take control. Marin's blood ran cold. Because in his eyes, just for a brief heartbeat, she saw a flicker of something ancient. Something powerful. Something not entirely him. And behind them, the sound of approaching footsteps grew louder. Elias's grip tightened on Marin's arm until her skin stung. His eyes, seconds ago soft and familiar, now flickered with an unnatural glow, an echo of the ritual still coiling inside him. Marin felt the hairs on her arms rise. It wasn't Elias looking at her in that fleeting moment. It was something older, something waiting. Alistair stepped between them instantly, his body a shield. Elias, he said firmly, stay with us, fight it. Elias blinked hard, breathing fast, his chest rising and falling in sharp bursts. The glow faded, leaving him exhausted and frightened. He sagged into Marin's side. I'm trying, he whispered, but it keeps pushing, like a hand on the back of my mind. Cale was already scanning the hall, nerves frayed. We don't have long. Once the influence takes root, it will anchor itself deeper. We have to get him into clean air. Lior pointed toward the far wall. There, the shaft. A narrow opening, half hidden behind a splintered weapon rack, rose toward a faint glimmer of moonlight. The passage looked steep, carved unevenly into the stone, but it was their only escape. Before they could move, footsteps thundered into the training hall. The guardians arrived. 5 of them, cloaked in black and silver, their faces concealed by masks carved with symbols of the old king. Their chants were low, rhythmic, carrying an energy that made the torches flicker wildly. Marin felt the pressure in the room spike, pressing against her ribs. Alistair moved first. He stepped forward with the silent grace of a predator, eyes sharpening. Stay behind me, he murmured. The guardians advanced in a tight formation. Their leader raised a hand, and the air warped. A shockwave shot toward them. Alistair intercepted it with a forceful counterstrike of his own power. The impact cracked the stone beneath his feet. Go! Alistair shouted. Lior grabbed Elias's other arm, helping Marin drag him toward the shaft. Cale stayed near them, glancing back again and again, his expression torn between fear and determination. The guardians lunged. Two broke away from the group and rushed toward the escape path. Cale intercepted them, slamming the first into the wall and ducking beneath a sweeping strike from the second. He fought with surprising precision. Quick, sharp, efficient. But he was outnumbered. Alistair clashed with the remaining three, the clash of magic ringing through the hall. Marin's breath came fast. She could feel Elias weakening. His steps faltered. His skin grew cold. "Marin," he whispered, voice barely audible. "I don't think I can stay awake." "You're staying with me," she said, steadying him. He looked at her, eyes clouded with despair. "What if I hurt you?" "You won't." He swallowed hard, tears burning in the corners of his eyes. "You still believe that?" "With my whole heart." Behind them, the hall erupted. Stone cracking, steel clashing, magic ripping through the air. Cale cried out as one guardian landed a heavy blow. Lior shoved Elias upward, bracing the boy with his shoulder, despite the pain tearing through his injured leg. Marin pushed Elias toward the shaft's base. "Climb," she urged. He hesitated, breathing in ragged, panicked bursts. I'm right behind you." Something in her voice steadied him. He grabbed the first ledge. Before climbing, he whispered, "If I lose myself, promise you'll remind me who I was." "You'll never lose yourself," she whispered. "Not while I'm here." He climbed. Marin turned back just in time to see Alistair slam a guardian against the floor with enough force to break stone. Cale struggled with the last attacker until Alistair intervened, pulling the guardian off him. "Marin," Alistair called. "Get him out." She nodded, climbing after Elias. The shaft was cramped, the walls scraping her palms. The scent of ash and old earth filled her lungs. Elias climbed slowly above her, his breathing uneven but determined. Below, she heard Cale shout, "They're regrouping! Move!" Alistair's voice followed, heavy with urgency. "Go!" As Marin helped Elias reach the final stretch, she felt the air shift, cold, sharp, like something breathing down the back of her neck. She looked down. A guardian, faster than the others, had slipped past Cale. He leapt, fingers brushing the stone near her foot. Elias cried out from above, "Marin!" She braced herself, yanking her leg upward just in time. The guardian's grasp missed by inches. Alistair's voice rose in a roar, followed by the sickening crack of impact. Silence. Then, "Marin!" Alistair called from far below, voice steady but strained. "Hurry! Elias needs to be in the open air." She resumed climbing. Elias reached the top first, pushing aside a stone panel. Cool night wind flooded the shaft, sweeping over them like a blessing. Marin crawled out behind him. Lior and Cale followed moments later, breathless and shaking. Alistair emerged last, pale and exhausted, blood on his lip. Marin turned to Elias, brushing his hair from his forehead. "We made it," she whispered, but Elias shook his head slowly. "No," he said, his voice trembling, haunted. "I felt it again. Stronger this time. The magic inside me. It's not gone." Marin's chest tightened. Alistair stepped beside them, grim. "It was never only the ritual," he said quietly. "Something deeper was placed in him long before today." Elias looked at them both with fear deepening in his eyes. "Then what am I becoming?" Night air swept over the cliffside, carrying the scent of distant pines and cold stone. Elias sat with his back against a jagged boulder, his breathing slow but uneven. Moonlight washed over his face, sharpening the fear hidden beneath his exhaustion. Marin knelt beside him, brushing dust from his sleeve. His eyes were distant, as if searching the darkness for answers he dreaded to find. Alistair stood a few paces away, scanning the valley floor for movement. "The guardians won't stop," he said quietly. "They'll come again, and next time they won't hesitate." Cale and Lior were nearby, tending to their wounds, though both kept watch on Elias as if expecting him to shatter or burst. Elias closed his eyes. "There's something inside me," he whispered. Not a voice, more like a presence. Heavy, old. His fingers dug into the dirt. "Sometimes it feels hungry." Marin's breath caught. She took his hands gently, grounding him. "You're still yourself," she said. "You're still Elias." He shook his head slowly. "No, they changed me, Marin. Not just with training, with magic, with blood. They said I was born for this." He touched the faint crescent mark on his wrist, a mark of lineage. Alistair turned toward them. "Your mark signifies royalty," he said, "but not the way they told you." He knelt, meeting Elias's gaze. "My father believed a successor needed to be forged, not born. He wanted a weapon that could survive anything, even darkness." Elias's breath trembled. "So, he created me?" "No," Alistair said firmly. "You were born, but he stole you, twisted the truth, twisted your fate." Elias looked away, jaw tight. "Then what am I now? A prince? A weapon? A monster?" Marin reached up, cupping his cheek. "You are the boy who survived them. That alone makes you stronger than anything they tried to shape." Elias's eyes shimmered, pain breaching his composure. "I don't want their power. I don't want their destiny. You don't have to take it," Marin whispered. Cale approached cautiously. "Majesty," he said to Alistair, "there's something Elias needs to know. Something I didn't understand until tonight." Alistair rose. "Speak." Cale glanced at Elias with a mix of fear and guilt. The magic inside him, the part that's waking, it was planted long before the ritual, before the training, before he was taken. Marin stiffened. "What do you mean before?" Cale rubbed a hand across the back of his neck. "It was infused into his blood at birth. They said it would awaken when he crossed a threshold of age and power." He swallowed. "They called it the old bloodline's echo." Lior looked up sharply. "That's an ancient myth." "No," Cale murmured. "It's real. I've seen it. Children with that echo, they're meant to inherit abilities older than the throne. Magic tied to the ancient rulers before the kingdom itself existed." Alistair's expression darkened. "My father never had access to that magic. No ruler has, not for centuries." Cale hesitated. "Then Elias must have received it from someone else." Silence fell like a blade. Elias whispered, "Someone else? Like a parent?" Marin's heart clenched painfully. He deserved the truth, but the truth might break him. Alistair met Elias's gaze. "Your mother died in the orphanage records. No one knows her lineage. Whoever she wasn't ordinary." Elias looked ill. "So I've never belonged anywhere." Marin squeezed his hand. "You belong to the people who love you, the ones who fought for you, the ones who refused to lose you." Elias held her gaze, his voice trembling. "Marin, I'm scared of myself." "I know," she whispered. "And I'm not leaving you." Footsteps rustled in the brush. Alistair whipped around, power flaring in his eyes. Cale drew a dagger. Lior stood despite his limp. But it wasn't a guardian who stepped from the shadows. It was a woman, hooded, tall, wrapped in a cloak sewn with ancient runes that glimmered softly under the moonlight. Her presence filled the air with a strange electricity, neither threatening nor comforting, simply undeniable. Elias stiffened. Something inside him recognized her. Her voice was soft, but it struck the air like a bell. "Elias," she said, "I've come for you." Marin moved in front of him instantly. "Who are you?" The woman lowered her hood. Her eyes glowed the same dusk color as Elias's. "I am the one they hid," she said, "the one they tried to erase, and I am his mother." Elias's breath stopped, and Marin felt the world tilt beneath them. Elias stared at the woman as if the world had stopped breathing. Marin felt his hand go slack in hers, the shock rippling through him so forcefully she thought he might collapse. The woman's eyes, those same dusk-colored eyes Elias had carried all his life, held a gravity that made the night air tremble. She stepped closer, her cloak whispering against the grass. "I thought you were dead," Elias whispered, his voice thin, fragile. "They told me you died before I could speak." "I did not die," she said softly. "I was taken, sealed away by those who feared what lived in my blood and yours." She knelt in front of him, reaching out but not touching, as if afraid he would shatter. "You were never meant to be a weapon. You were meant to be protected." Alistair stepped forward, suspicion sharpening his posture. "If you are truly his mother," he said, Where have you been all these years? Why return now, when the kingdom is on the brink?" The woman lifted her gaze to the vampire king, and for the first time, Maren saw something powerful spark in her eyes. Older than the throne, older than any magic Maren had ever heard whispered in legends. "I did not return," she said quietly. "I escaped." Kale inhaled sharply. "From who?" She looked toward the valley, her expression darkening. "From the same ones who took my son from the orphanage, the same ones who served your father, Majesty, the same ones who wanted the power in my bloodline under their command." Alistair stiffened. "The old bloodline." "Yes," she said, "and Elias carries its echo because I passed it to him." Elias swallowed hard, staring at her with a mix of awe, fear, and longing. "Why didn't you come for me?" he asked, voice trembling. She closed her eyes, pain deepening the lines around her mouth. "I tried. For years, I tried. But they bound me, body and magic. I could not move, could not speak, could not call for help. They kept me alive only because killing me would have awakened the echo within you too early." Elias shuddered. Maren tightened her hold on his hand, grounding him. "But now," his mother continued, "the echo has awakened anyway, because you endured their training, because you broke their ritual, because you chose your own path despite everything they forced upon you." She reached out, placing her hand lightly over Elias's heart. "This belongs to you, not to them." A faint warmth spread through his chest. Elias gasped softly. Maren felt the air change, not dark magic, not hunger, but something calm, something ancient and steady. His mother's power wasn't consuming him. It was stabilizing him. Alistair watched closely. "Can you remove what they planted in him?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I cannot remove the echo. It is part of who he is. But I can quiet it, help him control it." Her voice softened. "If he wants that." Elias looked at Maren, and Maren saw everything in that glance. The fear of becoming a monster, the hope of being more, the desperate wish for someone to believe in him. She cupped his cheek gently. "You deserve peace," she whispered. "You deserve control over your own story." His eyes filled with tears. He nodded once. His mother placed both hands on his head. A soft, golden light spread from her palms, wrapping around him like a warm breeze. Elias inhaled sharply, his back arching as the energy settled into him. Maren felt his grip tighten on hers, then slowly ease, his breath becoming steady. When the light faded, Elias sagged forward, leaning into Maren. She held him, brushing his hair gently. "Are you all right?" she whispered. His voice was soft, but clear. "For the first time, I think I am." His mother rose. Exhaustion etched into her expression. "He will still feel the echo," she said. "But now it will answer to him, not the darkness." Alistair stepped closer, his tone measured. "What happens now? They will come for him again." "They will," she said. "But next time, he will not be alone." Maren touched Elias's shoulder. "We'll face whatever comes, together." Elias looked at the three of them, Maren, Alistair, his mother, and a faint but real smile touched his lips. "Then I'm not afraid." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of dawn. Light touched the horizon, turning the sky pale gold. For the first time, Elias didn't flinch from it. He stepped forward, standing tall. "My life is mine now." Maren's heart swelled. His mother nodded proudly. Alistair placed a steady hand on the boy's shoulder, and as the sun rose, Elias walked toward it, no longer a weapon, no longer a shadow, just a boy, given a chance to choose who he would become. What did you think of the story? Subscribe to the channel and share it with someone who will also be moved today.